I'm Hanon, and I'll always be joined by Ethan.
Hey, it's a great day to be here, and I'm really excited to get into what we have to do today.
Iron Man 2,
Heck yeah.
2010.
Heck yeah. I'm a
That's,
big Iron Man guy, as we can tell.
you're rocking it today.
Dude, hey, this is fan behavior and for good reason.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
a great movie. So
Great
let's
movie.
let's not dilly dally any longer, and jump right into it. Let's jump off from the beginning
Yeah.
and let me turn around. There we go. The recap. It starts off where we left off exactly at the moment we ended Iron Man 1.
Yeah. Yeah. And that whole like I am Iron Man
Mhm.
like moment is just so cool. And I like how this movie takes that seriously. It's like, okay, the government has to have something to say here.
Yeah.
Right. There has to be some kind of problem, something's wrong. And that's where we get into like the Senate hearings.
Yeah. Mhm. Um, I think the so Bankoff is Whiplash.
Yeah.
The I think well, I think we can get into this, but there's a lot of different villains in this movie. And I think Tony is one of them.
Really?
In one of these movies, he's an enemy to himself.
Yeah.
Along with uh Whiplash and Hammer.
Yeah.
And we see Whiplash building his arc reactor similarly to how we watched Tony build uh his arc reactor in the
Yeah.
cave with a box of scraps.
Yeah. The box of scraps. I Vonkov as like a whole like villain throughout this movie,
Yeah.
like it's it is kind of a trope, right?
Mhm.
The whole like, oh, you stole my father's work
Yeah, sure.
kind of like trope. And I'm here to reclaim it,
Yeah.
right? And show that I'm better than you, right? And I think that does work for this movie.
And I'm refreshed. Like the past 2 movies we've done, it's been uh same guy, same powers, but bad guy. But in this one, it's like same powers-ish.
Ish, different like outlets,
Yeah,
right? And
exactly.
and if you really think about it, they both have some range to them,
Mhm.
right? But it almost feels like Whiplash was made to counter it,
Yeah,
right? Like he had this idea of, oh, if I can lock him up, I can short circuit him, he can't do anything,
yeah.
right? And that's where like the whips in to get the distance to come in because that when they fight later on, he can just blatantly just redirect
Mhm.
every like beam or
It's kinda
shot he
an
shoots at him. Yeah,
I actually really like this villain a lot. I think
yeah.
it's really well made.
I think he is a well done villain. However, my problem with him comes when it feels uh, like my problem with Von Cobb as a villain is that I think he gets almost beaten too easily sometimes, right?
Mm,
And I think it's more of like a just a realism hole for me,
mm.
like on the track. I know we're jumping ahead a little bit.
Yeah.
We'll get time to get to that.
Okay.
Let's move on.
Uh, yeah, so the Stark Expo is another underlying thing that happens throughout
Hmm.
the whole entire movie. And we're introduced it off the bat, very it's basically the World's Fair,
Yeah.
having like inventors and engineers from all around the world come together to the Stark Expo.
Yeah.
Uh,
So, we're
yeah,
fair, but it's just Tony
it's
Stark.
just Tony Stark.
Tony Stark is the world.
Yeah, or it's definitely falling into his narcissism,
Oh,
but
yeah.
everybody's loving it.
Yeah, it's the Tony Stark. Come
Yeah,
come on.
that's not the love.
Come on, guy.
Um, and I think so. Howard Stark are another recast that we talked about
Yeah.
in the first Iron
I
Man
mean, what?
that we watched.
Go what?
Um, very similar to I'm a big Disney fan, so
Mhm.
very similar to Walt Disney's introduction to his theme parks. Howard Stark has basically the same videos as Walt. Um, and what's it?
Didn't we say that Iron Man 2 was the first movie that they was made after Disney bought them? Isn't this the first Disney movie?
I don't think so. I think that's what last episode. I think we found
I
that
forgot what we decided.
it was something like that. But it's
We're
around
getting
that,
close.
yeah, where
We're
it's
very
around this
close.
time. So that's an interesting take. Because this is Howard is very much this Walt Disney figure in
Yeah.
but for weapons. He's the Walt Disney of weapons.
Oh, yes.
Um,
The Mickey Mouse missile.
and I think it's a really cool, like, this Stark Expo that Tony revived to,
Mhm.
I mean, basically give glory to himself. But,
Yeah.
um, it's a cool underlying thing that kinda drives the plot really well, in my opinion, of how, like, Hammer filled the void of when Tony started to not distribute weapons. Hammer
Yeah.
came in and was like, "Oh, I can make a lot of money off of this.
Mhm.
Um, let me prove myself,
Yeah.
in this weapons field."
Yeah, I think Hammer is really interesting in this movie just because we kinda get insight into, like, different forms of people. Like, you kinda get the idea that Hammer wants to be Tony so badly,
Yeah,
but we just hate him.
yeah,
Like, I just don't like Hammer at all.
yeah.
Like, it's like he's really trying to be Tony, and he kinda has the same, like, narcissism,
Mhm.
like, qualities that Tony has, like, pride and stuff like that. But whereas we like Tony for things like that, we hate Hammer for things like that.
We hate Hammer for the same reasons we love Tony.
Exactly, and it's really interesting just to see how they kinda go back and forth, especially in, like, the Senate hearing
Yeah,
bits of it, where they just their screen time together is really interesting, and
mhm,
it's pretty funny, I think.
yeah. Um, Played by Sam Rockwell, who is, I found out, uh, an Academy Award winner. Good for Sam.
For
Good for
Sam.
Sam.
Good for that guy.
Um, and I did something different this week. I found some first appearance comic.
Okay.
So
Mhm.
Justin Hammer, first appeared in Iron Man at number 120 in at 1979.
Wow. Okay.
So I have more as we
Yeah.
progress. Um, okay, let's get to I think one of my favorite scenes in all of the new, or I guess the original up to basically
The
of
Avengers.
the Avengers.
Yeah.
I think this Senate hearing scene is something that lives in my brain rent free. I think
It's pretty great.
I
It's funny.
it it introduces characters very well.
Mhm.
So Senator Stern,
Yeah. Senator's turn.
very minor character who is also another antagonist, I think.
Yeah.
Very smaller,
Yeah, but
but
he has an agenda,
yeah,
you could say.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I I think his reappearance in uh Falcon Winter, or not Falcon Winter Soldier, Captain America Winter Soldier, we
Yeah.
find out that he is working for Hydra.
Yeah.
So does that mean in this moment we're like seeing his input, or the Hydra's input into him trying to take the Iron Man suit?
Well, yeah, because if you're Hydra, this guy definitely poses a threat to everything you're trying to do,
Yeah.
right? Because this is a technological and all holds apart genius
Mhm.
who is actively trying to prioritize world peace,
Yeah.
right? Like, so
Uncle Sam resting in his lawn chair.
yeah, I would think that if you're Senator Stern and you're with Hydra, it's certainly in your best interest to take these suits away from Tony and give it to the government where it can be researched and discreetly passed on to Hydra even,
Yeah.
right? And if that happens, then I mean we don't get it's because of some of the problems down the road.
Yeah.
But regardless, yeah, I think but also it's easy to see why any average politician would say this guy just can't be doing this,
Yeah.
right? Because it almost seems like Tony is just has the government in his pocket at that point,
And he
which
kinda
he
does.
does.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he prioritizes world peace, right?
Yeah.
He's doing what the government couldn't, right? And so it it's also a power play by the government to try and seem like they're still powerful
Mhm.
and to have people believe in the government rather than Tony Stark,
Yeah.
right? And so you could make an argument that he is being a mouthpiece for Hydra in this moment, or you
If he is if he is influenced by Hydra in this moment.
yeah,
If
yeah,
we're
yeah.
speculating,
Yeah,
I think he is.
I think there's a solid argument both ways
Yeah.
because any normal politician would have probably that opinion, and
But
any
definitely Hydra.
and also Hydra would definitely have that opinion.
Yeah, for sure.
So it can be anything really. You can go either way on it, coin flip.
Don Cheadle,
Don Cheadle,
Lieutenant Colonel Rhodes,
Lieutenant Colonel
was
Rhodes.
introduced in this scene
Yeah,
with an epic entrance,
yeah,
which I think, um, Paramount definitely, or whoever's behind this movie, definitely, or whoever made this choice at least, knew about, like, this recasting because our first shot of him is him, like, is a silhouette basically,
Yeah.
and you're like, "Oh, who is this? Who is it? Who is it? It's Rhodey!"
It's Don Cheadle.
Yeah, which I think is a he plays this character really well, and I love him for it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Don.
Thanks, Don.
Um, I also love not to keep going on this scene but it's one of my favorites in the end.
No, this is great. I love this scene.
Um, the scene where, um, Tony takes over
Screen.
the screens
Yeah.
with, a bunch of different, like, Iron Man knockoffs, I think is really funny.
I think it's
And then when Hammer pops up and, uh, he's like, "Is that just a hammer?"
it reminded me of the DiCaprio, like, "Wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute."
Yeah, yeah,
There he is. Yeah, I think and also his phone is really cool
yeah.
in that scene. It's
LG.
like it's like almost looks like a see-through iPhone 10
Mhm.
almost, and he just goes, "They're mine, they're
Yeah,
mine," and just
and
it's so funny.
these screens pop up later in the MCU. I know they're in Avengers and the Helicarrier
Mhm.
because they're like I think they're just see-through screens.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's a clever, filmmaking technique to kinda see what people are working on. Like, "That man is playing Galaga." That's it.
That is playing Galaga.
Um,
That was in Iron Man
as in Avengers.
I said Avengers.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah, you're right,
Okay, and we're this, like, introduction of the first maybe 15 minutes or so, it kinda sets up the whole movie. We're also
Mhm.
introduced to Tony's, like, blood toxicity,
Yeah.
levels that go throughout this whole movie,
Mhm.
which is, I think, another, um, I think, conflict for Tony,
Yeah.
on top of Whiplash and Hammer and everything else.
Yeah, and this this whole, like, problem he has is probably my favorite throughout the movie,
I agree.
I think
Yeah.
this is the best kind of antagonistic line that goes throughout the movie is that he's his own enemy, right? And he has to, while he's gradually weakening, right? And mentally, he's crumbling apart, right? He has to figure out how he can save himself,
Mhm.
right? Because he's, devoted his life almost at this point to saving other people and prioritizing world peace,
Yeah.
but he can't save himself,
Mm.
right? And that whole storyline is really cool to me. I think it's really funny not really funny, but it's a really interesting way to pit the genius against himself,
Yeah.
right? Make him play against himself. Don't give him somebody that he can outwit or outplay, like Whiplash, Hammer, or even Stern, if you wanted to say that,
Yeah.
right? Give him an actual challenge, and the best challenge for him is himself,
Mhm.
right? And so this race against time that he has, um, and seeing how because in the comics he's known as like an alcoholic, like he doesn't take problems very well,
Yeah.
right? And so watching him kind of grow and learn how to cope and at the end of the day overcome it is a really cool line to see throughout this movie.
Yeah. It's the what what happens when you take away what Tony Stark loves the most, himself?
Yeah.
Uh, what does that bring to other people around him? What does it bring to Happy and Pepper, especially, and Rhodey too? Uh, and we see that throughout this whole movie, and I think that's really well done, and, maybe even the true conflict of the movie.
I would say so.
Yeah.
So I think if you're looking just in the short term of the movie, I would say that Whiplash is the main antagonist.
Mhm.
But if you stretch it out across the like first Iron Man movie, the second Iron Man movie, the Iron Man franchise as a whole, that's mostly the problem here. It's most prominent,
Yeah.
right? Because this thing that he created to, save his life is now killing him,
Yeah.
right? And that's like because he thinks like he can't just take the thing out, he'll die.
Mhm.
If he leaves it in, eventually he'll die.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's kind of what starts this whole spiral. And I love the bit where Nick Fury is like, "You haven't tried it all yet,"
Mhm.
right? He's like, "I've done every permutation, every possible way."
Yeah.
He's like, "No, you haven't." He's like, "Excuse me? Like, like, what do you know about this stuff?"
Yeah, yeah. Probably a lot.
Probably.
He is Nick Fury,
He's Nick Fury.
and now we're finally introduced to Scarlett
Yep.
Johansson, Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff, into the MCU. I think taking besides the little cameo that Nick Fury does in Iron Man 1 and Tony Stark does in the Hulk movie we just watched. Great episode. Go watch it.
Yeah.
Um, this this is the first kind of introduction crossover
Mhm.
we get in the MCU. I think done properly.
Yeah.
It's a it's a way that the MCU loves to introduce other new characters, and like they do the same thing with Spider-Man. They introduce him in Civil War and
Yeah.
uh, Bucky Barnes in Winter Soldier.
Mhm.
They take and this is the same thing that happens in the comics is they introduce a brand new character in somebody else's story, and I really like that because I get to know the character before they have their own movie even.
Yeah, and I think that that can also work against them sometimes,
Hmm.
right? Like, with my whole opinion going into this movie right here,
For audio listeners,
yeah, Captain America: Brave New World. My opinions going into that movie before, as I was walking in, is just I've always seen Falcon as, like, a background character, right? Like, you can introduce him in several different spots, but I was never really given a reason to care about Falcon,
Mm,
or give him like, for me to have confidence that he's, "Oh, yeah, this guy can be his own have his own movie," right?
mhm.
Like, with Spider-Man, there's just so much, like, existing, like, media and content that anybody would be like, "Heck yeah, I'll go watch any Spider-Man movie, I don't care what it is,"
Yeah.
right? But, like, if you said, "You wanna go watch this new Spider-Man movie? Do you wanna watch this new Falcon movie?" I mean,
Yeah,
the choice is
yeah.
pretty blatant there. So I think that while introducing these characters in other movies and bringing them together to eventually have their own movie, it works really well for their formula, but also with characters that don't have as much support behind them, it makes it harder for them to go out and do their own thing,
Mhm,
you know, without be feeling gridlocked or being trapped as this character's shadow.
mm,
Because I feel like Falcon kind of just ended up as Cap's shadow throughout most of the time, right? Bucky felt independent enough because I had reasons to like care about Bucky, right? He was unique, he was different, and he has his own challenges and problems. I mean, and Falcon does too, but they're just we weren't given enough time to fully care about that.
sure.
But back to this movie, it's the first movie in the MCU where we have something building upon everything else,
Mm,
right? Like Iron Man 1 builds into Iron Man 2,
yeah.
right? It was 2 years in between the Incredible Hulk and Iron Man 2,
Mhm.
right? And Joe Favreau said he was rushed. John Favreau
Yeah.
said he was rushed,
Mm,
right? And that he wanted to spend more time on this movie, which I mean, later on we get like 2 or even 3 movies a year
mm,
out of these guys. So I think it's really interesting how they bring all the characters together and have them interact in ways that we see pushed further along.
yeah,
Because I think that Iron Man 2 is when they're committed to doing the whole MCU thing.
yeah.
I think that they
It's definitely obvious in this
yeah,
movie.
yeah, and Iron Man Incredible Hulk could probably like, "Okay, let's see what we can do here," and if Incredible Hulk worked, then they would continue,
Yeah.
right? Which I do think it worked, right? And
Despite what everybody says,
despite what everybody says,
again, go watch that movie.
if you hate The Incredible Hulk, go watch the episode. Trust me, will change your mind.
Okay.
It's a decent movie, or at least go rewatch it. But Iron Man 2 is the, like, staple, like, hey, the gavel has been hit is hitting the table, like, we're doing an MCU,
Yeah,
right? Which is really cool,
yeah,
and to see them kinda bring everything together like that.
yeah. And to have, uh, Black Widow come into this movie is no mistake because I have another comic,
Oh, man.
introduction. So, uh, Black Widow is first appeared in Tales of Suspense number 54 in 1964 as not as Natasha Romanoff, but as Natasha Romanov with a V.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Off.
As a Soviet villain to our
Oh,
man. Um, and which is suitable for the time because at
yeah.
1964, a
Yeah.
lot of conflict with those two countries,
Yeah.
um, of America and the Soviet Union. And so, I think it was interesting to read that first off because uh, Natalie Rushman is introduced as the notary, and then we later find out is
Yeah.
an agent of Shield, but as a good guy,
Mhm.
right off the bat, we never really get to experience a villainous side of Black Widow. Um,
I mean, it would take us 11 years to
mhm,
get that kinda, like, background history, which is really interesting considering she's in the Avengers movie.
yeah,
Like, I feel like if you release Black Widow, like, not like that exact movie,
yeah,
but if you release, like, a Black Widow movie, I just don't think that there was a good enough stage for her yet at that time. I
mhm,
I think it's the Falcon problem,
no,
right? Is that they saw that back then, but now they just spew crap out and
sure,
hope it sticks, right?
yeah.
But back then, they were very intentional about the movies and which ones they came out and in which order they came out.
Do you think so we don't get to see a Black Widow movie till
11 years after.
yeah, until after Endgame.
Yeah.
So and even then, it's a prequel, yeah,
Yeah.
that's so there's I guess there's that, um, should should've, Black Widow gotten a movie after this one between, uh, Endgame and Iron Man 2? I say I think so.
I I think from a story perspective, it would make sense
Yeah,
to give Black Widow her own movie, but I think then you also have to give Hawkeye his own movie as well.
mhm.
Because if you're gonna
Not his own
if
TV
you're
show?
gonna commit to giving everybody a movie before Avengers, then you have to commit to that hard,
Yeah,
right? And the thing about it is that I'm not sure if Scarlett Johansson and Hawkeye's actor's name, if they really have like RDJ type personalities
mhm,
or Chris Hemsworth type personalities to hold their own as a main role in a movie, right? Considering how Iron Man was a really not well known character, I would say that Hawkeye and Black Widow are even below that at the
mhm,
time, right? And so you would really have to do a lot of work to bring those characters up enough to, kind of leave their Avengers supporting roles
yeah.
to be able to take on the lead role in the movie.
I wonder if the heads of the MCU, like Kevin Feige,
Mhm.
were thinking, "Oh, Hawkeye and Black Widow, they're not interesting. Like
Yeah.
they don't have anything like special about them besides training.
Mhm. Yeah.
But Iron Man has a cool suit. The Hulk is big and
The Hulk
strong.
and he's yeah,
Captain America also big and strong,
iconic.
iconic too. Thor is basically has
Yeah.
magical thunder
Yeah,
powers.
there's nothing there that grabs your attention,
Yeah.
right? But and honestly, if I were to go back and do it in my own way, right, I would probably have a Black Widow and Hawkeye movie, right? Put them
Oh,
both
that could have been
together,
good.
make it more of like an undercover spy thriller. You can introduce Hydra because you get it in Captain America: First Avenger,
Mhm.
right? And you can bring back Hydra in a current day, right, and give them, more of like a shieldy kind of movie,
Yeah.
right, and just have them co-star in it, and build them up that way.
Because they're already friends.
Yeah,
Like, uh, Clint Barton, Hawkeye,
yeah,
like, basically saves, Natasha from the Red Room is what I'm remembering, um, and gives her another shot. I think that would have been really interesting to just see and watch, that as a whole movie in itself,
yeah,
the history between, uh, Hawkeye and Black Widow. So
yeah. I think a dual movie would have worked really well.
a what?
I think like a dual movie
Yeah,
would have worked really well for that purpose.
yeah.
Because also, like, they couldn't do movies on their own, right?
Mm.
If you brought them together, I think you can make something work there. Was Nick Fury in it as like the third kind of like big role in the movie? I think you made something out of that.
And I think it would also make Hawkeye less of a joke,
Yeah, yeah,
because they're like, "Oh, what is this guy with a bow and arrow gonna do?"
yeah.
I think Hawkeye's epic.
I
Hawk
don't.
Oh, okay, well, we're gonna disagree when the Hawkeye movie comes out.
Yeah, well, yeah. Good luck, buddy. Okay,
Um,
if they this is like completely off topic. Let's move on.
um, anyway, let's keep going with the movie.
Yeah, let's
Let's
stick to
see.
this guy.
Uh, Christine, the reporter from
Mhm.
Iron Man 1 comes back at, the racetrack
Yeah,
interviewing Justin Hammer again. Another reason why Justin Hammer is just a little step behind, Tony.
yeah. He's just the parallels are there all the time.
Yeah,
This whole movie.
but Tony always gets the upper hand.
Mhm.
Like, that's just kinda like the sad fact for Justin.
Actually, nah, I don't like this.
Um, so Whiplash first appearance. Have I said this yet? I don't think so. No. First appearance in also Tales of Suspense 1968, number 97. So if you want to know more about Whiplash, you can go look that up. This is all based off of Wikipedia though, so we'll see how
Let's do that.
yeah. Um, and so they have this epic fight at the racetrack that we've mentioned a little bit before.
Yeah.
Kind of like this. So Tony's having this uh midlife crisis ish.
He
Well,
is on death's door, so
end of his life crisis.
yeah.
So he jumps in this race car,
Which poor driver, like he just
there's a shot that we see like through a television of the former driver like throw his helmet.
yeah, just likes it on the ground.
I thought that was funny. um, but we see more of this like impulsive behavior for Tony that eventually leads to him kind of getting burnt out later in the movie. But we also see this fight scene and the evolution of Tony's suit
Mm.
in this suitcase. So anyways, I think this scene also is really good and well done.
I think it's really good.
We see more of Happy,
Yeah.
which is nice.
The most confusing part about this scene to me is that Whiplash lands on the track, right? He's slashing up these cars. And these cars are going easily 100 miles an hour faster than employees at minimum. But as soon as Tony's on the ground, he just can't hit the guy.
Yeah.
He can hit a 100 mile per hour moving car minimum, but he just can't hit the guy on the ground,
Yeah,
right? Like, and the fact that okay, and also one thing I think is really funny and also really annoying in this scene is the amount of screaming Pepper Potts is doing in the car. Like, granted, anybody would have that reaction,
yeah,
but she is yelling the entire time.
yeah.
Like, just the entire time.
If you don't know this is gonna happen, why'd you get in the car? Also, how did Vankov know Tony was gonna be there?
I think I think Vankov didn't know Tony would be in the car, but I think he knew that if he 'cause he knew he was gonna be there.
Because this
Right.
race car's there.
Yeah, but he didn't I don't think he knew he'd be in the car. I think his plan was to just slice up a bunch of cars and draw him out.
Mm,
I didn't think he knew he was gonna be on a silver platter there for him. I
yeah,
think he just was trying to provoke him to get him out.
it kind of worked out in his favor
I mean, yeah,
until he got arrested.
yeah, until he
Um,
body.
but yeah, this evolution of the suit, I think Tony is increasingly trying to bind himself with the suit more and more as we see throughout all the MCU. Yeah, like in the first one, we see him in his basement, basically, like
Garage thing.
yeah, binding it to himself. We see him in this movie, like kind of reaching it and bringing it towards himself.
Yeah. And
Uh,
that scene is so cool.
it's awesome.
The scene where he puts the suit on is great, and a lot of people online I see when they talk about this scene is that, "Oh, it was so nice of Whiplash to wait for her to put the suit on."
Yeah.
But the point is that he's trying to prove that he's better,
Hmm.
right? It's a pride thing, it's an honor thing, and so he wants to, fight Iron Man. He doesn't just wanna fight Tony Stark,
Yeah.
that's boring, he knows
Yeah.
he's gonna win that, but he wants to fight
He wants to fight the Iron Man.
yeah, he wants to fight Iron Man.
Yeah. And later, like, and then in the next movie, Iron Man 3, he gets that he like implants like magnets or something into his arm to make the suit come to him. We get nanotech later. So
Oh, damn.
this evolution of the binding between him and his suit, I think, really starts in this movie.
They become more inseparable
Yeah.
as time goes on.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so Venkov gets arrested,
Yep.
thrown in jail. Tony has this conversation with him that I really like. It humbles the villain.
Yeah.
It humbles uh, the hero, Tony, where we see them have a good conversation with each other and not fighting or anything.
Yeah, it's kinda like a Batman Joker kinda moment
Mm,
sometimes, right? Where, like, how it, like this is completely off topic, but, like, how, like, the Batman and the Riddler in the newest Batman movie just had this conversation, and it's, like, almost surreal,
mm,
right? And it's like in this movie, they're sitting there talking, and, they bring what they have to the table, and it kind of tries to reconcile the 2 of them,
yeah,
where, like, each of them have been fed a single story, right? Like Whiplash knows that, like, oh, this guy just doesn't even care. He just robbed my father of his legacy
yeah,
and ruined his life and essentially sent him to die,
mhm,
right? When Tony doesn't even have that. That's not even in his, like,
He
mental
doesn't even know.
landscape, yeah,
Yeah.
right? And it's not until Nick Fury tells him that, like, "Yeah, you haven't deported,"
Mm.
right? And tells him why, but, like, this is just, like, a humbling moment, like, the 2 of them, like you said, that kind of, you know, shows that, you can get good work done just by talking to each other.
Yeah. 2 men without their gadgets or gizmos. They're just diplomatically talking this out.
Yeah, they're both human.
And, Vankov mentions the palladium issue of how it's being and he knows that this reactor in his chest is damaging Tony,
Yeah.
which I thought was interesting because, Vankov has his reactor on the outside of his
Mhm.
chest and not on the inside, which I mean, he doesn't get the palladium poisoning, but also it makes it easier for someone to take it,
Yeah.
which I think, it was an interesting thing because in the first one, in our first episode, we mentioned how, um, Killmonger not Killmonger, Ironmonger
Yeah.
had to, like, have that special tool to
To take it out,
take
yeah.
it out, and Tony kind of just rips it out of Vankov's.
Yeah, but if you think about it from Vankov's angle, not only A, it's safer for him, but B, it's easier to sell it that way,
Eh,
right? Because like, his dad's goal was to sell the thing
mm,
and to, get rich off of it, and so it's a lot easier to sell if you just don it like a normal suit of armor instead of having to get something surgically implanted
sure.
into your
Yeah,
chest, right? And so it's the slight differences that show where their motivations are,
yeah.
and I find it interesting that if Vankov knew that the palladium was a thing. I'm honestly surprised that Tony didn't think about this sooner,
Mm,
right? That kinda surprises me and throws me for a loop that he built this thing himself, right? And well, he had blueprints or in another one in the cave, box of scraps,
yeah.
right? That sure, he had to do it to survive, but I'm not surprised. It kinda surprises me that he didn't there's no comment about, like, "This is gonna affect me later," or
Mm,
something like that, because that if it did, they would allude that they already had a plan in mind, but I'm just kinda surprised that Tony didn't anticipate this,
mm.
and start working on it earlier.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to I know it's at least 6 months later
Yeah, it's 6
from
months.
when he announced that he was Iron Man.
Yeah, it's 6 months.
So which is about at least 9 months from at least the cave.
Yeah.
Um, so there is room for error, like you were saying.
Well, yeah, but I think because he also made the second version, like, he made an improved version of the one from the cave.
Yeah,
It's like, he's making this surely he has to know that there's some risk involved here,
yeah.
right? He's putting all this metal inside of his body, right? And surely, I just can't so I find it really hard to believe that he doesn't know that this is gonna happen,
Mhm.
right? That's kinda like the big or not the big, but a plot hole for me in this movie.
Mm,
That, like, surely he has to know.
mm.
Right? Like, this is sure this is the only option that he sees it at his moment when he makes the arc reactor, but he has to know this is gonna happen.
Yep. Um, yeah, I think the fact that he made another one, might give you more support for your argument. But also, who's going to implant an arc reactor in their chest before him? I think he should have done more research, I guess, maybe.
Well, but, like, I'm just saying that if Vankov knew when he built his,
Yeah,
right, then how did Tony not know,
yeah, yeah,
right?
that's fair.
Like, that doesn't really make sense to me, and I think it honestly makes that whole plot of Tony against himself better,
Mm,
right? Because he knows that he has to do this to himself,
mm,
right, in order to survive, but also he knows it's gonna kill him,
yeah,
right? And so I think it honestly, if he knows right back in the cave and back in when he makes the next version of the arc reactor, that it's more of him being sacrificial,
mm,
right? And that just kind of develops his character of this RDJ Iron Man throughout time.
yeah,
I think it makes it a lot cooler.
yeah, I agree. Wow, we really come full circle on
I
that.
know, right? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Um, so after this, we hear talk about how, um, so I think, yeah, Pepper gets promoted to
Yep.
CEO,
Yeah.
and then Tony. So keep with this like Tony's going through this death's door thing where he's
Mhm.
just trying to give out what he has to the
Yep.
people he loves, which alludes to this next scene of his birthday party,
Mhm.
where he asks Natalie Rushman,
Yeah, Natalie Wood.
super Natalie Rushman, Natasha Romanoff. It's
I mean, yeah, yeah, yeah.
you're a world class spy and you can't change your initials. That's
Yeah.
sorry. That was just
No, yeah,
something
no,
I thought
yeah,
was funny.
yeah, yeah.
Um, uh, what did I do about this party? He throws the biggest party he's ever thrown, and Rhodey comes to shut it down. I think um, that fight scene when Rhodey dons, I guess, the early War Machine suit
Yeah,
is also really well done.
I think it's really good. I'm a
Um,
fan of that scene.
I like how they they talk while they're doing it.
Mhm.
That you can tell that these are like two best friends, um, fighting for like the best for the other one. I mean,
Yeah,
Tony obviously doesn't care anymore. He
yeah,
just um he we find out eventually that he just wants Rhodey to have the suit anyway.
yeah,
Um so we really kind of see the struggle of Tony during this fight scene as well.
yeah. I mean, putting yourself in Tony's shoes is really rough,
Yeah.
right? Especially, like, when you try to think about how he doesn't wanna tell anybody around him, and he's kinda, like, slowly spiraling out of control,
Mhm.
and this is where we see, like, people trying to have some accountability for him, right? And he ends up, like, hurting Rhodey a little bit in this process of them, like, fighting and all their back and forth, right? And it's honestly also, like, just a clash of wills too,
Mhm.
right? Like, Tony is trying to do what's best for the people around him and to go out the way he wants to on his own terms,
Mm.
right? And to be remembered how he wants to be. And Rhodey's looking at them at a bigger picture because
Yeah.
he doesn't know that, Tony's limited here.
Mhm.
Um, yeah.
He Tony is also just it's a pride thing with him too. He doesn't want to ask for help.
Yeah,
He wants his struggles to be his own struggles without asking anybody around him for any assistance.
I know, and I think it's because that I think that honestly, it's also more of a nurture over nature thing in
Mm,
him too, right? Because when you're known as like the smartest guy in the world, who can help you,
mm,
right? Especially when you're trying to synthesize new elements.
yeah. Like asking for help is weak, and I'm not weak. I'm the smartest guy ever.
Well, yeah, and I think and I don't even know if it's like that. I would see more of a like, who can possibly help?
Oh, you think he's justified?
No, I don't think he's justified. I think in his own mind, I don't think it's "Oh, I'm so much better." I don't think it's a pride thing. I think it's more of I don't I think he genuinely thinks that no one can help him,
Mm,
right? I think he feels alone and he feels isolated because he just thinks that he's the only person in the world that could deal with this, right? So I don't think it's "Oh, I'm the smartest in the world. These people are all so below me." I think it's more of no one literally no one can do anything.
mm,
Right, and so why burden them with that,
yeah.
right? And so I think it RDJ's Iron Man may be one of my favorite characters throughout cinema,
Yeah.
like, throughout, like, his whole, like, Iron Man 1 through Endgame and all that. I RDJ's Iron Man is a really compelling character,
Mm,
and I think this movie is severely overlooked when it
mm,
comes to his, like, character building and what we learn about Tony through his, like, troubles and how he wrestles with himself and how he seeks to get help from other people. Because remember, we're looking for Avengers,
yeah.
right? Where he's gonna be on a team, working with other people, right? When he, is a solo gig, right? Like, it's even hard for him to think of the idea of him working together with Rhodey,
Mhm.
right?
I mean, he fights him.
Yeah, 'cause he's like, "Dude, get out of here. Like, what are you doing?"
Yeah.
Right? And I also like to think that this is kind of like a Sensei versus the Master scene almost,
Oh,
or Sensei versus the Padawan kinda, like,
sure.
idea, right? Where Tony's, like, fighting him, sure, but he's also trying to see because he wants to eventually give him the suit, and he wants to see, "Okay,
Oh,
let me see how you
prove
fare."
to me that you
Yeah,
deserve
prove to
this.
me that you deserve to, like, take on my mantle.
Yeah.
It's almost like a death of the Bat family kind of idea, right? Like, prove to me that you could actually do this,
Yeah.
right? And carry on this legacy that is Iron Man. And so when Rhodey flies off and just leaves Tony behind, that's how he feels, right? Like, he's been fighting against himself this whole time, and he feels alone, and that when Rhodey flies off without him, it kinda confirms that,
Hmm.
right? That it's a physical manifestation of, "I am alone," right? And like, Rhodey at the ultimately wants to help him, but because he doesn't know, Tony is pretty much assuming that no one can help him,
Hmm.
right? And that there's nothing to be done. He's ready to just wipe his hands and just die.
Yeah.
That's kinda where he's at this point.
So he goes to get a donut?
I mean, why the heck not? He's done crazier things. He's jumped inside of a race car and, so
This might be one of the most tame things he's done.
I know, frankly, hell, if I had an Iron Man suit and was gonna die, I would wear that thing and just do whatever the heck I want with it. Like, I mean, there's nothing wrong with, like, having a donut in an Iron Man suit with your glasses on,
He looks pretty well
enjoying
done
the
doing it.
sunset. I mean, he looks pretty freaking good while he's doing it.
Yeah. This also leads into another iconic scene,
Yeah,
of Tony in the Giant Donut eating a donut
yeah,
at Randy's Donuts,
yeah.
um, and where he meets Nick Fury. Well, I guess not meets, he's met him before.
Season
But, he sees him again, yeah,
yeah, he sees him again.
and, this, I think it might be our time to talk about, Fury's big week. So, I don't know how much you know about it,
Dude,
but
go for it.
it's the it's basically this week leading up to him defining the Avengers,
Mhm.
including, uh, this thing with Iron Man 1 and Thor, and I think, also digging Captain America up from the ice. I think that all happens in basically the span of 1 week, kind of putting the whole gang back together,
Yeah,
and, this is, like, the start of that. We see him going to meet, Tony in a giant donut at a donut place, along with Natasha Romanoff. What the we didn't see that coming.
dude, I had no idea.
Um,
Fooled me.
but Tony didn't. So, uh, I think this is leads into, like, basically the whole turning point for the whole movie.
Mhm,
Um, Fury basically puts, Tony on house arrest after this,
mhm,
um, forcing him to reflect on what he's doing or what he's done, and gives him a box of
yeah,
of, uh, Howard Stark's stuff,
yeah,
um, leading to Tony maybe hopefully finding a solution to cure his,
yeah,
toxicity,
yeah,
his blood toxicity.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and Nick Fury is just in at this part of the movie, it just seems like he's looking from the outside in,
Mm,
like, he knows what's going on, right? And, like, I find it hard to believe that Nick Fury would bring in this box, put it at Tony's door, house arrest him after he knows he's gonna die if nothing changes, and just give him a bunch of his dad's old stuff without knowing that something was in there,
mm,
right? Because that's otherwise, if Nick Fury has no idea that anything's in there, that makes no sense.
yeah,
You're gonna take the guy that's dying and just lock him in his house just to what, wallow? Like that doesn't make sense.
yeah,
So I think Nick Fury has some idea, and I think we get that from the donut shop scene where he's like, "Well, you didn't try every one."
yeah,
He's like, "Yeah, I did. Who are you talking to me like that?" He's like, "No, I know you didn't."
yeah,
Right? And then I think Nick Fury is knows can predict Tony well enough to know that if he plops this big thing of his dad's stuff in front of him, he'll go through it, right? And I think that this is Nick Fury kind of being like his dad in a way,
mm,
where he's like, "Here, you can figure this out." And he's not railroading him, but he's pushing him in the right directions in order for him to come to this self-discovered growth
mm,
in character,
yeah,
right? Because him finding this out himself empowers him even more, right? Like, as he was fighting himself, right? For him to just get the solution from somebody else would be way too easy,
mm,
right, for him. And so for him to kind of discover it out on his own when he was kind of put in on the tracks by Nick Fury, it makes it a lot more satisfying for Tony's character, um, and kind of almost not mends, but kind of reconciles these problems that he had with his dad.
Yeah. Because we do see another part of his relationship with his dad that doesn't really get talked about too much. We know that he has a lot of shoes to fill with Howard's death. Um, but we see all that Howard is doing is for Tony.
Yep,
Is to uh, give him the opportunity to do something even better than what Howard could do.
yep,
And going off of your Nick Fury point, um, we know that Fury is a little clever, conniving little guy.
yeah, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, he we see that in Avengers too, where he knows more than he lets on, and he has a hand in everything, whether you know it or not. And I think that's just a really cool character trait for Mr. Fury.
Yeah, and I think it's also a fact that I'm sure Nick knew that this element existed somehow, right? Because he alludes to it, right?
Mm,
And but I just because like Jarvis says that it's impossible to synthesize.
mm,
I think that's where he was letting Tony do his thing,
yeah.
right? He's like, okay, if anyone can figure out how to do this, it's gonna be Tony Stark,
Mhm.
right? And so I love the following scenes of Tony watching through his dad's old stuff, and having this, like, blast from the past moment where his dad talks to him and is like, "The best my best creation was you,"
Mm,
right? And I really do love him kind of reconciling with his dad
mm,
afterwards, because we see how, like, earlier on, he's more kind of just agitated by him, right? Because he says, "Never said I love you, he always
yeah.
despised me,"
He
right?
never even said he liked me.
Yeah, right? And but when he goes back in time later and sees him, like, he's super affectionate for him, right? And I think that this part of the movie is really important to that because he knows his dad's true motive then,
Yeah.
right? Is to help Tony. And I really love, like, Tony's character arc, like I said earlier, I don't wanna be a broken record, but it's just phenomenal. Like, I love RDJ's Iron Man.
Mhm.
I think it's phenomenal. I I really do.
Well, you only got one more movie of just Iron Man.
I know, but and I'll continue to talk about Tony Stark until he
Yeah.
right, and and, the and these scenes are just really important, and I also love the whole, like, elephant creation
Mhm.
bit. Like, that is just so cool to me. I think that's awesome. The holograms in this movie look
They
awesome.
look amazing. I
They're
have it
so
in my
cool.
notes.
Yeah,
They
like
look so much better than the first one.
I know. I can't remember if you mentioned this in Iron Man 1 or not, but Iron Man movies defined what high-tech holograms look like.
You thi I think Star Wars did that.
Not to the scale at which Tony Stark does it.
You think so?
They had the little hologram of people standing there and talking to people, but I think Tony Stark with the whole, like, engineering, like, let me, like, blow this up and, like, move these things around, right? I think Iron Man kind of invented that, but I do think Star Wars invented what the laser sounds like. I think that
I
Star
think
Wars did.
I think Star Wars invented holograms and the MCU, well, I don't know, invented like, has the basis of what holograms should look like. And this movie, the blue and transparent, yeah, that but because in the first one, they're green in
Yeah,
in Iron
that's
Man
true.
1,
That's true.
um, but I think they look the best in this movie so
Yeah, I think they were given the recipe or the blueprint by Star Wars, but I think Iron Man perfected it.
you think so?
Right, yeah, I think Iron Man really gets it right.
Hmm.
I think yeah, I because people, even today are still trying to
But this is
recreate
your
that
totally
like,
unbiased
dude,
opinion.
yeah, this is like my totally unbiased opinion.
Yeah,
Yeah, I have no like stake in this game. I think I think it's completely
yeah.
anyone's game, but yeah, I do think that Iron Man does perfect these like holograms, and people still try to create them today, right?
Speaking of this sequence, there's a fun little, nod where in the book that Tony's looking through,
Mhm.
we see a scientific representation drawing of the Tesseract,
The Tesseract.
the namesake for our
I
channel,
know the namesake, the Tesseract. Tesseract Todd was
um,
first brought up.
which is really interesting that it's in Howard's book because we see later in Endgame, he is working on the Tesseract. In the shield base. So I was like, "Whoa, that's like a 12-year or something, uh, difference
Yeah.
between, um, this movie and that movie."
Yeah, because I do think that, like, this and also we see Cap's shield in this movie
In the scene, yeah,
too.
too.
Yeah, right. At this point in the movie, they are so committed to like the MCU,
Yeah.
like universe.
Marvel Cinematic
Yeah,
Universe is happening.
they are committed to it. Like
Yeah.
they have stamped it. They are in, right. And this is where we kind of see those seeds being planted, right? Because it's odd. Before they were super super discreet, and there were a few of them.
Mhm.
Now we're just pouring it on. We're just pouring it all on, right? And so I really like it. I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
I think it's really funny how Colson's like, "What is this?"
Yeah.
And he's like, give it here." And you think he's gonna like do something with it, or, like throw it. He's just gonna use it as like a tool to
Yeah.
prop up his park and
Yeah.
accelerator or whatever.
Well, Coulson knows what it is. He's already
Yeah,
a huge Captain
yeah,
fan. We know that because he has trading cards in Endgame
yeah.
or in the Avengers movie. Um, Also in this sequence, we get a snippet towards the next movie of Thor,
Thor. Yep.
which another one of your favorites.
Another one of my favorites. I'm a huge Thor guy. Big fan of Thor.
So I'm waiting for your shirt in about 2 weeks. I can't wait to see it.
Can I get on Amazon?
Um, So because we know that because of the post-credit scene showing the hammer in New Mexico that he mentions he's going to New Mexico
Yeah.
in this scene.
And Nick Fury also mentions that he has a bigger problem in the southwest of the country to
Yeah,
deal with. Like,
yep,
we're setting up Thor already,
yeah,
right? And we're really establishing in this movie that everything is interconnected,
mhm,
right? Which also from a marketing perspective,
yeah,
if you want to get this movie, you need to watch these first,
mhm,
right? And so you're getting people to go back and to put money and to spend money and to buy these movies, right? Because streaming services weren't a huge thing yet.
no,
Like
yeah,
not definitely not as big as they are
in
today,
2010, yeah,
right? So you're still gonna go like buy a CD,
sure,
or go right from like a red box
mhm,
or something. And so it's really from a marketing perspective, it makes a lot of sense to have this interconnectedness, and it also makes it feel so much more rewarding.
mm,
And to see all these little details spread out throughout the movie, kind of setting up for the movie because it also builds suspense for the next one,
yeah,
right?
yep,
And so you're like, "Oh, well, what's that? I wanna know. I
yeah,
wanna know what's going on in New Mexico." Right? And we see the hammer and we go, "Oh, okay, here we go." Right? It's about to get real.
yeah,
And so I think that this movie is a pivotal movie in the MCU
yeah,
as it is,
I agree,
right? We talked about how Iron Man 1 was so important for the MCU as well because it was the birth of it.
mhm,
But I would almost argue that this movie's more important,
interesting.
I would think.
Mm.
I do like Iron Man 1 better.
Well, we'll
But
get that we'll
yeah,
get to it,
but
we'll get to
I do think that Iron Man 2 r is really what, like,
this is what the MCU
yeah,
is this
right? Because we start from, like, these little tiny growths throughout Iron Man 1: Incredible Hulk, and Iron Man 2 is where we just have a huge growth spurt
yeah,
in what we're doing, in what we're setting and what Marvel is setting their sights on doing and achieving.
yeah,
Right? And so I think Iron Man 2 is super, super important in the growth and the longevity of the MCU.
yeah, I agree 1000%.
Cool.
So we get this like this sequence, and then we get to basically the climax of the movie, the big fight scene at Stark Expo. New suit by Tony, new suit with Rhodey. Um, and we get these bots that
Be the unmanned drone.
yeah, that Venkov has been working on, takes over the bots, and really provides a really well-made fight scene in my opinion.
Oh, I think the fight scene is incredible.
Mhm.
I
Cut they call
yeah, like Hulk.
yeah, sure.
I do think this fight scene is really well done and really cool, and I like the whole, like, Rhodey, Iron Man back to back kinda thing.
Mm.
But my problem with this part of the movie is similar to Iron Man 1.
Oh, no.
The first 2/3 of the movie are great, and then the last third, I start to, like, kinda peter out a little.
Really?
Yeah. Because for me watching this movie, the antagonist was always Tony struggled with himself throughout this movie, right?
Sure.
That's where it really was for me. But I feel like it's really hard to reconcile that kind of problem, right? And to provide a fulfilling
He solved it.
thing to the movie.
He solved it.
I wouldn't no, he solved it, but the end of the movie there feels wrong,
Yeah.
right? And so I feel like this is necessary right, to have this last big fight scene, and it's great, but I'm not as compelled by Vankov as a villain. You know what I mean?
What do you mean? I think I think if Vankov was not and Hammer was not in this movie, and it was just, uh, Tony and the palladium poisoning, it would not be as, good of a movie.
No, I agree. What I'm saying is that my problem is with Vankov as the villain. That's my problem with this movie, is that I like, outs like, "Oh, you stole my father's legacy." Okay, and? Like, whatever.
Mm.
And after their conversation, it just feels wrong. I just don't it kinda feels like they're just, like, they I don't know how to put it into words, which we're doing a podcast, which
Yeah, that's kind of
is my biggest thing. But Vankov in this movie is really difficult for me to get behind as, like, as a actual compelling villain, right?
what do you think would have made him more compelling?
I I wish he would find some reason to escape the "you killed my father, prepare to die" kinda trope, right? I wish he found some way to break free of that and be
And he didn't kill his father.
well, yeah, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
You know what I'm talking about, right? I'm just trying to make the bit.
yeah,
Okay, I'm
sure.
trying to make the
For the
reference.
bit, for the
Let me make the reference.
yeah.
And I really just think that Vankov throughout this movie, like, his character's great, but he's not a compelling enough villain for me.
Man,
He
I mean, I think what what else would a compelling villain be
like
in the MCU?
I really just like I don't know what would have been the better option,
Yeah.
but Vankov is just kind of there. Like, he's provides another problem for Tony,
Yeah,
right? And I think that the whole like if feel like they also needed to put Vankov in this movie because part of me feels like they wanted to make Hammer a bigger villain, right?
yeah, that's the other
Because
thing I have.
they set the seeds of like, oh, he's doing these like international things with these like enemies of the state,
Mm.
trying to recreate Iron Man suits like Iron Man 1, but they couldn't do the same thing twice. But they wanted to bring in Justin Hammer because he's, Tony Stark's rival, and that's a cool dynamic to have. But they
He kinda
couldn't
disappears after this movie.
yeah, and they can't do the same trope for both the first and the second movie with, like, corrupt businessman, does international
Yeah,
dealings, and ends up creating an Iron Man suits in parentheses, and Tony has to fight them and destroy them, right? Like, if I told you that, that's the first and second movie,
yeah,
right? And so, Van Gogh does play a role to create a different villain for the movie,
yeah,
right? Which is needed,
I
right?
agree. It is needed.
But this
I don't know what else you would want from a villain. I really like
I
the
guess I just wished his motivations were better.
then, um, like, I think it's pride that was spat everywhere. I think it's pride um, is a his motivation because, um, Tony's father it's basically the battle of the sons. Like,
Yeah.
Vankov's dad and Tony's dad were friends, parted ways. Their sons have their legacy, um, and they're basically fighting for their for that legacy and for their
For
father's
the keys of the kingdom.
yeah, for their father's pride. And I think that makes Venkov more effective as a villain than if it was just Hammer. I
Yeah.
wish that Hammer continued along in the MCU. I wish we see him again. He's in, like, a couple of, what if episodes.
Yeah.
I know that he's at least in one. But other than that, he doesn't really show up again that as much as I would want him to, because I think he could be a really cool behind the scenes guy for other villains like Venkov.
Oh, yeah. I do yeah. I I think Vankov's fine. I really I okay.
I think he's the best villain that we've had in the MCU so far as of Iron Man 2.
Yeah.
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 I
Yeah.
think compared to Abomination, I think he's a better
Oh, yeah. I
he
don't
has better motivations, I think,
yeah.
compared to, Ironmonger. Well, I I don't, Ironmonger's motivations aren't justified, but they're, I think, more compelling, maybe, but I think
I think I would put Ironmonger in Vankov pretty close.
Whiplash is cooler.
Whiplash is definitely cooler,
Yeah.
and I do like his fights, and I really wanted Vankov to I don't know what I expected out of Vankov, but when I was watching this movie, from what I remembered, right, going back and, rewatching it, I just remembered Vankov feeling more, like, powerful, you know?
He basically takes down Tony.
Yeah, but, like, even at the beginning, like, at the racetrack, like, he hits with everything he's got, and Tony just walks up to him and
But yeah,
beats him up,
yeah. I mean,
right?
he has Tony basically almost dead, and then but he for pride, like we're talking about, he wants to fight Iron.
Yeah, and like, and that's kinda where I feel like that's where the one punch issue with Vankov
Mm.
is like, on the track, Tony literally just winds up his arm, punches him, and he's done,
Yeah.
and it's wraps, right? And that just doesn't as a for a fight, that doesn't feel satisfying,
Yeah.
you know? Like, the way I think Marvel overcorrected, right?
Mm.
They had a super drawn out fight with Ironmonger, and then I think Vankov's fights are way too short.
But it's not just Vankov. I think the drones are in it, and the drones I think are really cool. Speaking of, there's a scene in this movie, which I think we just have to talk about, where uh there's a little kid in an Iron Man helmet,
Yeah.
and Tony's comes up behind them and like destroys the drone, and it's strongly theorized, and I maybe confirmed. I'm
I
trying
don't know if
to
it's
remember
confirmed, but
that this is Peter Parker. Um, in he's the little kid as um in the Iron Man helmet. And I really like that theory.
yeah, I think it's a really interesting theory for sure.
Mm.
I would like to think that it is, just as like a nod and continuing to, do that
To
universe
bond that
building.
relationship too.
Yeah, and I said that really early because I'll save my thoughts for when we get to the actual like Spider-Man movies
Yeah.
where we get Tony and Peter interacting together. But yeah, I do like that scene a lot. I do like the drones. I do I like the drones more than just it's interesting. I like the drones because it really shows that what Tony has isn't infallible,
Mhm.
Like, just how he can just, like, take the screens over in the Senate scene, right? These things can just get hacked,
Yeah.
right? And
Like the trope of, "Oh, I'm hacking into the mainframe."
yeah, like, and I think that, like, turning it's one of those moments where we get it with we get a similar moment with the first and second movies we've seen, Incredible Hulk and Iron Man 1, that instead of fighting one bigger guy, it's a bunch of smaller
Yeah.
versions of the guy,
Right.
right?
It's
So
one guy with whips.
the guy with whips, yeah, 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 yeah. But I do like that, they bring that in as a factor of that, right? And it kind of also shows why, like, there's a whole comic run of an evil Tony Stark,
Mm,
right? And he pretty much controls the world with unmanned Iron Man
mm.
drones, essentially. And so that's kind of interesting to see. I think that kind of also places Tony in a spot where he's like, okay, that's a horrible idea. We should never do that,
Mm.
right? I like how Tony and Rhodey bond in this fight scene, right? And it almost feels like a reconciliation from their fight
I
earlier in the
agree.
movie,
I agree.
right? And so I like how there's a lot of full circles in this movie,
Yeah.
right? And they close a lot of they close a lot of these circles, and they also open a bunch more,
Yeah.
right? Like they are quite literally using Iron Man 2 as a launch pad for the rest of the MCU.
Yep. Um, so surprise, Iron Man wins.
So, oh, shocker!
And
That
then
glorious King won again.
yeah, yeah. Um, and then we're transported to the shield base.
Yep.
And this will be I think the last thing we talk about before we get to the list, but I think it's important. So, um, it basically goes into the Avengers initiative. So we get to the shield base, right?
Yeah.
And there's this whole thing about the Avengers initiative with Tony being included or not. Are you checking yourself out in the view spot?
I am.
um,
Well, excuse me. Excuse me. Let me just look it.
okay, are you good?
Yeah.
We're leaving that in.
No, no, you're not. No, you're not. We're cutting that out.
We're uh we're talking about this Avengers initiative, and in the map on the back we see a couple places lit up, like, somewhere in, like, Middle Europe is a place, Southwest, in New Mexico's lit up,
Mm,
LA's lit up, New York's lit up. These are the ones I can remember on the top of my head. But also, the middle of the Atlantic Ocean is also lit up for what I'm thinking is maybe Namor and Atlantis, maybe,
maybe.
um, which we find out later is not the case. But I think maybe this was like we're trying to say, trying to set up maybe a Namor movie.
Well, I just don't know what else would be there. Like, I'm trying to think. Like, what else would just be in the ocean?
Besides Namor.
Yeah.
Namor, I mean, that's the first thing that come like,
Well, like, would it, like I'm trying to remember.
a boat.
In the first Avenger, does Cap go down with the Tesseract?
Yes, but that's not in the Atlantic Ocean. Now where this is, I think.
Yeah.
That's a just Arctic.
What else would be there? Like, is there an item there or something?
I mean, the Atlantis is the only thing that comes to my mind. Um, but also what's lit up is, uh, what the believed spot of Wakanda, which I think is trying to also allude to the introduction of Black Panther, which we don't get until years down the line.
Yeah, usually.
But I think it's a really fun nod to the future of the MCU.
Yeah, and, I'll say it again, this is also this movie actually, listen, I'll say it when we rank the movie. This movie is the, like, jump pad for the rest of the MCU,
Yeah.
which is why I think it is the most pivotal structural piece of the MCU, right?
This movie?
Yeah, this movie,
Mm.
'cause it builds everything else.
Yeah.
It lays all the foundation. It does all the gritty hard work
Yeah, I
for the
think that
rest of the rest of the MCU.
yeah. Any more, additions before we get on to the reality rankings?
Nope.
No?
Let's go.
Let's go to the reality rankings. So, if we did this right, hopefully, I really hope we did this right.
Hopefully.
You should be able to see our reality rankings somewhere, maybe here,
Somewhere. Hope
maybe.
to see.
Um, so this is what our reality rankings look like so far. We have Iron Man at the number 1 slot.
Mhm.
We have Incredible Hulk at number 2. And now showing we got to put Iron Man 2 on the rankings.
Yeah, this is kinda the first time we're actually gonna have a discussion about where this movie deserves to
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
What if
So
we say where we think it should go at the exact same time?
no, I wanna know where you would put it, and I wanna see where I would put it after that.
I'm putting it at 2.
You put it at 2?
I'm putting it at 2.
Okay, so I think we can agree that it is definitely better than The Incredible Hulk. Can you agree on that? Okay.
Yeah.
But you are raising some really good points on how this is basically the starting point for the MCU.
Yeah.
Does that make it better than the first Iron Man?
No.
Why not?
The first Iron Man for me, because it's a balance here, right? Like, Iron Man 2 sets up a lot of things to the rest of the MCU. Like I said, springboard, jumping platform, everything. But as an actual movie, I prefer Iron Man 1 over Iron Man.
So, like, if you were to watch if you're like, "Okay, let's watch a movie," you have these 3 movies to pick: Iron Man 1, Iron Man 2, and The Incredible Hulk. You would choose Iron Man 1.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Is it because of
It's not ridiculous.
what?
It's not ridiculous. It's not ridiculous to say that.
Because is it because that Iron Man 1 is the beginning of the MCU?
I don't even think so. I think just as a movie, right? Just as a s as a because when they made Iron Man 1, they were not convinced or set on doing the MCU, right?
Yeah.
And so they made Iron Man 1 as a standalone movie, right? And I think going at it with that mentality made it a really good movie,
Mm.
right? Just to watch on its own, right? Because these Iron Man 2, Incredible Hulk, there's we got MCU going on, right? But with Iron Man, I don't know. I would really put Iron Man 1 at the 1 spot. I think it deserves to be there, and I think the amount of good that comes out of that movie outweighs what comes out of Iron Man 2. But I would still hold that Iron Man 2 outweighs Incredible.
I am gonna get so much backlash for this too, but I think Iron Man 2, I would go this might be because I've seen Iron Man 1 so many times or, because I think, uh, I like some of the elements in Iron Man 2 better, but I think I would put Iron Man 2 maybe maybe at number 1. But if you convince me, I might give you
Well, why would you put it in number 1?
I think, like we were talking about, it holds so much of these, expanded universe things into this movie that prepares you for the rest. I think you could watch Iron Man 2 without seeing Iron Man 1, but watch the rest of the MCU and it still makes sense.
I think you definitely could, but I think Tony Stark's character really comes to life in Iron Man 1,
I
right?
Okay.
And I think that that's I know in 2, we find out a lot more about him, but I feel like without seeing his creation in Iron Man 1, it disenfranchises Iron Man 2, right? And I'm not trying to say that Iron Man 1 is better because it's a progenitor. I'm saying that Iron Man 1 is better because as a standalone movie, if I was on Disney Plus and had to watch one movie, I'm watching Iron Man.
Yeah. Um, we were talking about in Incredible Hulk that we wish that we saw the Hulk as a more serious and has more problems
Mhm.
in that movie. I think we get that not with Hulk, but I think we get that in Iron Man 2.
And And if you wanna go with that route, you absolutely can, and at this point, it's getting to, like, a, "Oh, well, what mood are you in for a movie?" Right? But I think that Iron Man 1 is a better job of portraying Tony Stark and who Iron Man is at the end of the day, and that's what makes an Iron Man movie, is how they portray Tony Stark and his character as Iron Man, and I think the cl is more classic, typical Tony Stark in Iron Man 1 than Iron Man 2. Iron Man 2 adds a layer of depth that improves his character over the long term, but Iron Man 1 sets the precedent
Yeah.
for who Tony
You
Stark
would
is and what Iron Man means.
you're very passionate about this.
Dude, 'cause it's a better movie.
I yeah, I think I you wouldn't have Iron Man 2 without Iron Man 1. I'm not saying that for the rest of the MCU, we're
Yeah.
definitely gonna put the
Yeah.
first movie
Yeah.
over the second
It's a
movie,
slippery slope to go down that way.
and I think that this is a living list. We can change it around.
Yeah, we can always
If we're like,
it
"Oh, yeah, I think Incredible Hulk should be at number 1,"
liar.
we could but we have
Yeah.
the freedom to
Yeah, we have free will.
um, so, yeah, I think I'm gonna we can stick it between we can stick it between those oh, shoot, I did not do that right. We can stick it oh, no.
Too, I can do I think too.
Yep, we can we'll put Iron Man 2 at in the number and we'll put Iron Man 2 in the number 2 spot
Where it belongs.
for now,
Where it belongs.
okay, with
You just cut it again, you didn't copy it.
with instead,
Shoot. I thought you cut it.
I think I think I can live with that for now, but, I didn't there we go. So, right now for our audio listeners
Man.
for our audio listeners, we have number 1, Iron Man, number 2, Iron Man 2, and number 3, The Incredible Hulk.
I'm satisfied.
I know you are.
I'm satisfied. I like this list so far. I
We
like
can we'll see where it goes in the next one. Upcoming, we have Thor,
The
no, not the Dark
not
World.
Dark World.
Not yet. We know we don't do that yet.
Thor 1.
We have Thor
Thor
1,
1, yeah.
coming out in about 2 weeks' time.
Yep.
Stay tuned for that. Stay up to uploaded for new short film content. We have that coming out. I know we have some good ideas about that.
Mhm.
Um, we're flirting with the idea of having some fun Marvel themed game nights, whether that's video games or board games. We have some Marvel themed board games that we would love to play.
Mhm.
Um, and stay tuned. Welcome to Tesseract Talk. I've been Hanon. I've been Ethan. I don't know why I decided to switch it up today. Anything else to add, Ethan?
No, I think you just about got it. Stay tuned for like we said, for any short form content you have coming out. And also just let us know if you have any ideas, right?
Yeah.
Things you want to see, let us know. We're here for it. If you have any questions, we'd love to do like a little Q&A bits here and there. So any questions you have about movies, Marvel in general,
Yeah, follow us on Instagram too,
yeah,
at Tesseract Talk.
yep. You can get this wherever you get your podcasts.
I think so.
Yeah,
Definitely on Spotify.
yeah, Spotify and YouTube, right? Yeah, for sure.
Definitely for sure.
Yeah,
Anything else?
nothing.
We're on.
About it. Yeah.
I think that's it. All right. See y'all guys later.
See ya.
Bye.